our first question, and we'll spend all of our time on this particular question, and when you see it, I think you'll understand why. What is the mark of the beast? Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 through 18. I have abbreviated the question for the purposes of the slide, but the original question read like this. Revelation speaks of the mark of the beast and how people won't be able to buy and sell without it. I know that Revelation is written in figurative language, but some of it is not. For example, Revelation 2:10, be faithful unto death. There is talk on the news about a microchip that could be implanted into everyone for personal ID and could have various uses, even controlling how the population behaves. I'm sure the liberals are saying that this is a conspiracy theory. However, there are conspiracies out there. What is your understanding of the mark of the beast? Well, here's the passage under consideration. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Well, I think just reading this passage should raise several questions in our mind. First of all, who's the he? And who is this beast that we're talking about? And what does this number 666 signify? Well, when you look at the context, the he under consideration here is the earth beast that John writes about beginning in the 11th verse. I'll have more to say about that fella a little bit later on. And the beast under consideration is the sea beast that John sees at the very beginning of this chapter. Once again, that raises a question. Well, who is this earth beast and who is this sea beast? The question that we're considering reminds me if someone were to read an Agatha Christie novel, and right there in the middle of that novel, Christie says something and somebody asks, well, now what does that mean? Folks, we can't answer the question under consideration by just jumping into the middle of the book of Revelation, so we're going to have to back up. And I want to share with you some keys that I believe unlock the book of Revelation that we need to keep in mind that I think will help us answer the question under consideration. And the very first thing that I want to point out is that this book is, in fact, a revelation. The book begins with these words, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants. The Greek word is the word apocalypsis, from which we get words like the apocalypse or apocalyptic language. The word basically means an uncovering, a laying bare, a making naked, a manifestation, or an appearance. By describing this book as a revelation, we should understand that God wants us to understand what this book is telling us. The second thing that I want to point out is that this book is a prophecy. Now, normally when we think of prophecy, we tend to think of prediction, foretelling future events, and that is an element of prophecy. But much of prophecy is just preaching, it's proclamation. Preaching, therefore, is forthtelling, telling forth the message of God, and prediction is foretelling. And you've got both of those things going on in the book of Revelation. In Revelation 1:3, right there near the beginning of the book, we read, "Blessed is he who reads, and those who hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written in it, for the time is near." And then a very important key, I believe, to understanding the book of Revelation is that we are told that it would be fulfilled in the near future. By that I mean near to the time when John wrote this letter. I think this is a point that a lot of people overlook or neglect to keep in mind when they come to the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 1 verse 3 goes on to say, "And keep those things which are written in it, for the time is near." John was told that this revelation pertained to things that would occur in the near future. Notice what the very first verse says. "The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants things which must shortly come to pass." And then again, verse 3, "The time is near." So right at the beginning of the book, we have two statements that tell us, I'm talking about things that are going to occur in the near future. And then when we go to the end of the book, Revelation chapter 22, beginning in verse 6, we read, "Then he said to me, These words are faithful and true, and the Lord God of the holy prophets sent his angel to show his servants the things which must shortly take place. Behold, I am coming quickly. Blessed is he who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book." And then a few verses later, in verse 10, it says, "And he said to me, Do not seal the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand." Now let me ask you a question. If we're told at the beginning of the time, at the beginning of the book, that it's about things which would shortly take place, the time is near, and we're told the same thing at the end of the book, when should we be looking for this book's fulfillment? Well, pretty quickly, relatively speaking, from the time of its writing. Doesn't that make sense to you? Makes sense to me. Now, sometimes folks will appeal to a couple of passages to suggest that God views time differently than we do. In Psalm 90, verse 4, Moses said, "For 1,000 years is in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night." Peter says, "But love, do not forget this one thing, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day." But Peter is not saying that time is meaningless to God, that God doesn't know how to tell time. He's saying that in the outworking of God's plan, time is immaterial. God's timetable may be very different than ours, but God's going to do what he promises to do in his time. We also need to remember that when Peter made this statement, he wasn't talking to God, he was talking to men. And 1 day is not with men as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day. I want you to compare the instructions that are given to John at the end of Revelation with some instructions that were given to the prophet Daniel about 600 years or so 500 years or so before Jesus was born. In Daniel chapter 8 and verse 26, and I'm not going to take the time to read that passage, you might glance over there. Daniel was told to seal up the vision that he was receiving because it belonged to many days in the future. Well, we know from the first verse of this chapter that this vision was received by Daniel about 550 BC. We know from history that the vision was fulfilled after Antiochus Epiphanes desecrated the temple in Jerusalem in 168, 167. It was fulfilled when that temple was cleansed in 165, 164 BC. So how long was the many days? Roughly 385 years. Daniel was told, you seal up the vision because the fulfillment belongs to many days in the future. Now compare that with what John is told in Revelation chapter 22 and verse 10. John is told, don't seal up the prophecy of this book because the time is at hand. Well, there's two views about when the book of Revelation was written. Some believe that it was written early, around 65 AD. Most scholars think that it was written a little bit later, around 95 AD. But there's a lot of folks out there today who believe that most of the book of Revelation is still unfulfilled. It's to be fulfilled out yonder in the future. Well, think about what that would mean. That would mean that this expression, the time is at hand, is 1900 plus years out in the future. Does that make sense? Doesn't make sense to me. We need to recognize that the book of Revelation had significance to those who read it the first time. The readers were to calculate the number of the beast. And in Revelation 17 and verse 10, we are told that the sixth of seven kings is on the throne. Is on the throne when? Is on the throne when John is writing this book. And we read about the great harlot, which is described as the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. Notice, the great harlot is currently reigning when John writes this book. The book of Revelation had contemporary significance to its original readers. Now, dispensational premillennialists tell us that most of the book of Revelation, come back here, is yet to be fulfilled. They tell us that the first chapter is about the resurrection of Jesus. And chapters 2 and 3, the letters to the seven churches, is about what they call the church age, the age that we're living in now. But then they tell us that chapter 4 and 5 is going to be about the rapture. That hasn't occurred yet. Chapter 6 through 19, the Great Tribulation. Chapter 20, 1 through 10, the millennial kingdom. Then you have final judgment. Then you have the eternal state. Here's my point. Futurists tell us that most of the book of Revelation is yet to be fulfilled, and yet John says the time is near. Now we need to keep that in mind as far as our original question is concerned. The question about the mark of the beast. Should we be looking for the fulfillment of that still in the future? is that something that was fulfilled near the time that John wrote the book? I've got a sneaking suspicion you know what I think about that. Let me share a statement with you from a newspaper. Not in the lifetime of most men has there been so much grave and deep apprehension. Never has the future seemed so incalculable. I knew I was going to stumble over that word. Incalculable as at this present time. The domestic economic situation is in chaos. Our dollar is weak throughout the world. Prices are so high as to be utterly impossible. The political cauldron seethes and bubbles with uncertainty. Russia hangs as usual like a cloud, dark and silent upon the horizon. It is a solemn moment. Of our troubles no man can see the end. Does that sound like our world today? Oh, come on, folks, wake up. Nod your heads. That sounds like today's headlines, doesn't it? You know when that was written? Harper's Weekly, October 1857. Here's my point. We need to interpret current events in light of the Bible, not the Bible in light of current events. Are you with me? You see my point? We are told that the book of Revelation would be fulfilled in the near future, and it is obviously written in symbols. It's filled with figurative language. In fact, the book of Revelation is described by scholars as what they call apocalyptic literature. There's evidence of that in the very first verse. And he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John. Well, what does that word signified mean? Mr. Thayer in his Greek-English lexicon says to give a sign, to signify, indicate, to make known. Mr. Vine in his dictionary says, perhaps the suggestion is that of expressing by signs. Well, to be honest, we don't really need those definitions. All we have to do is read the book. Revelation is a symbolic book. We're told that the 7 stars that we read about in chapter 1, verse 16, represent or signify the angels of the 7 churches. The 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. It's obvious that the slain lamb in chapter 5 is a reference to Jesus. We're told that the 7 eyes are the 7 spirits of God, that the golden bowls of incense represent the prayers of the saints. And we read about this great red dragon in chapter 12, whose tail sweeps a third of the stars of heaven. Has there ever been a dragon like that, literally? We're told that's Satan. So how should we interpret the apocalyptic language of Revelation? Well, we need to expect symbolism. Ordinarily, we expect language to be literal, unless the context indicates that it's figurative. With the book of Revelation and other books like it, we need to reverse that rule of interpretation. We need to expect figurative language unless the context indicates that it should be interpreted literally. We need to focus on the big picture and not ask, well, what does every claw on every paw of the beast signify? We need to let the Bible interpret itself. We need to interpret history in light of the Bible, not the Bible in light of history. I think we need to read the book of Revelation as a drama. Now that I went through that about as quickly as I could, because I thought we needed that background information. So what about this sea beast? Well, this is what the book of Revelation tells us about the sea beast. I don't have time to read these passages, but I hope you will believe me when I say I read them when I put this chart together. He comes up out of the abyss. He comes up out of the sea. He has 10 horns and 7 heads, and the 10 horns represent 10 kings, and the 7 heads represent 7 mountains and 7 kings. He has 10 diadems on his 10 horns and names of blasphemy on his 7 heads. He's like a leopard, a bear, and a lion. And he was given his power, his throne, and great authority by the dragon. Remember, the dragon is Satan. He has 1 head that was smitten unto death, but the death stroke is healed. The whole earth wonders after the beast, and the whole earth worships the dragon and the beast, saying, "Who is like unto the beast, and who is able to war with him?" He is given a mouth which speaks great things and blasphemies, given authority to continue for 42 months. Interestingly enough, Nero's persecution lasted about that long, November of 64 to June of 68. He blasphemes God's name in his tabernacle. He's given permission to make war with the saints and to overcome them. He's given authority over every tribe, people, tongue, and nation. He's worshipped by all that dwell on the earth, whose names are not written in the book of life. He carries the great harlot Babylon on his back. He hates the harlot, makes her desolate and naked, eats her flesh, and burns her with fire. And the beasts and the kings of the earth gathered together to make war against the Lamb and his army. And finally, the beast is cast alive into the lake of fire. Now, that's what the book tells us about the sea beast. And I know I went through that really quickly. I believe that the sea beast represents the Roman Empire that was in existence when John wrote the book of Revelation in the 1st century. Now, one big reason that I believe that is because in the book of Daniel, we've got visions pertaining to 4 great kingdoms. We're familiar with the vision in chapter 2 about the image with the head of gold, breast and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron and feet of clay, and there's this little stone that rolls into this image and it topples over, and then the stone becomes a great mountain. In chapter 7, we read about 4 beasts. One is a lion with eagle's wings, one a bear with 3 ribs in its mouth, one with a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, and then there's this terrible beast with iron teeth, and we read about the kingdom being given to the Son of Man. Now, do you remember something we said about the sea beast? That it was like a leopard and bear and lion. Well, this image and these beasts, I believe, represent 4 kingdoms. First Babylon, then Medo-Persia, then Greece, and then Rome. And then you've got the kingdom of Christ. Now, one big reason why I believe the sea beast in Revelation is the Roman Empire is because he's described as being like the leopard, the bear, and the lion. And then, notice these similarities between what Daniel tells us in Daniel 7 and then what we're told about the sea beast in Revelation 13. They both come out of the sea. They both have 10 horns. You've got the leopard, bear, lion. They speak great blasphemies. They have authority to continue for 42 months. I don't know why I can't say months. Makes war with the saints. Triumphs given to the saints. It's because of these parallels, or at least they look like parallels to me, that caused me to think that the sea beast in Revelation is the Roman Empire. Oh, mercy. I got it 6 or 7 minutes and I haven't even got to the number of the beast. Well, what about the earth beast? Well, it comes up out of the earth, suggesting its human origin, I believe. It has two horns like a lamb. It speaks as a dragon. There's disguised ferocity here, it seems to me. He exercises all the authority of the first beast, so it's a subordinate authority. He makes the earth dwellers to worship the first beast. He does great signs. He deceives the earth dwellers with his signs. He tells the earth dwellers that they should make an image to the first beast. He gives breath to the image. He causes those who will not worship the image of the first beast to be killed. He causes all to be given a mark on their right hand or forehead. We're getting close to our question. He allows only those who have the mark of the beast to buy and sell. So there are economic sanctions going on, it seems to me. And he's also known as the false prophet. He's cast alive into the lake of fire at the end. There's a couple of different views about who this earth beast is. Some believe that it's talking about apostate Jerusalem, those who believe that the book was written early, before AD 70. Others believe that the earth beast is the Roman Concilia, a group that enforced emperor worship. So what about the mark of the beast? Well, you can't buy or sell without it. The number is 666. If anyone worships the beast and receives the mark, he will drink of the wine of God's wrath. So God's not happy with these folks. And he'll be tormented with fire and brimstone. When the first bowl is poured out, there will be a loathsome sore on those who are with the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is really the opposite of the seal of God. The mark of the beast is given to all who worship the beast. The seal of God is given to those who are serving God. The mark of the beast is on the right hand of the forehead. The seal of God is on their foreheads. Remember, this is apocalyptic literature. This is figurative language. You've got the name of the beast or the number of his name as opposed to the name of the Lamb and the name of the Father. With those who receive the seal of God, those who receive the mark of the beast will be tormented day and night. And those with the seal of God will see God's face and reign forever and ever. Well, there's been all kinds of suggestions about what this mark of the beast represents. And you can see on the chart some of those suggestions. Oh, I do want to share this with you. Some years ago, Brother Eric George submitted this information. He says, we may be living in the days of the Antichrist. I saw this item in the newspaper this morning. Take the phrase, cute purple dinosaur. Anybody remember Barney, the purple dinosaur? Some of the older folks do. Take the phrase, cute purple dinosaur, and convert it to proper Latin lettering, and he gives that. Now remove everything but the Roman numerals, convert those back to Arabic, add them up, and you get 666. Thus, Barney is the Antichrist. You're supposed to be smiling about now. He said, I thought that some of you might be able to use this to show just how ridiculous it is to make associations of 666 in the book of Revelation to modern-day individuals. The mark of the beast has been explained in a couple of different ways. One, that it represents the number of man, or the number of mankind. Second explanation, that it's the number of a man, a particular individual. The first view is explained like this. Since there is no indefinite article in the Greek language, the phrase the number of a man could also be translated the number of man. The second view is explained this way. The phrase, the number of a man, could indicate the number of a certain individual. Compare, I love her whose number is 545. That was a lover's inscription on the walls in Pompeii. Well, I think I'm going to skip that chart. Notice the New King James Version reads, his number is 666. The Old American Standard Version reads like this, his number is 666. There's a variation in the Greek manuscript. Some read like this, which is kind of the way the Greeks would write 666. Other manuscripts have these three different Greek words there. I'm going to run past that. Well, Haley, in his commentary on Revelation, made this observation. He says, of the many efforts to reduce the 666 to the name of a man, the most popular choice has been Nero Caesar, which in Greek is Neron Caesar. Translated into the Hebrew script and applying the Hebrew system of gematria, where letters represent numbers, the name can be translated into the desired number 666. However, in Greek it would be 1005. So here's those numbers. Hang with me. Leon Moore says the possibilities as to what this 666 is all about are almost endless. But to get this result, we must use the Greek form with a Latin name transliterated into Hebrew characters, and with a variant spelling at that, the vowel letter Y has to be omitted. This solution has its attractions, but no one has shown why a Hebrew name with an unusual spelling should be employed in a Greek writing. Well, pushing back on that statement just a little bit, we're going to have proper numerical valuation for this number. It's a reference to a man. It's going to have contemporary relevancy. And Revelation is a very Jewish book. Other names in Revelation are very Hebraic: Abaddon, Armageddon, Satan. There are Greek spellings of Hebrew names in the New Testament. Asia Minor was well populated by the Jews. Alternate spellings were common in ancient times. Neron Caesar is the linguistically correct Hebrew form. And David Chilton observes, of some related interest is the fact that if Nero's name is written without the final N, the way it would occur to a Gentile to spell it in Hebrew, it yields the number 616, which is exactly the variant reading in a few New Testament manuscripts. The most reasonable explanation for this variant is that it arose from the confusion over the final N. So, I think it's most likely that the number 666 is a reference to Nero in some way. But the most important thing that I want you to take away is that Revelation is written about things that would be fulfilled in the near future. So I don't think the number of the beast is talking about microchips that folks might have implanted under the skin today. Now, there are principles in the book of Revelation that apply to us today when we find ourselves in difficult circumstances as the people of God, but that's for another time. Thank you. If you have questions, I'll be happy to talk with you privately.